Oh, we're live. I didn't know it was live. Very well. Welcome, everyone. Sorry, let's close the door up. Welcome to Monday Night Moshiach class. Hope you're all doing well. L'chaim. So today is a very exciting and interesting class. It's quite a lengthy sikha, and I'm most likely going to be going through it quickly and potentially even ending it a little bit early and jumping around because my eyeballs are popping out of my head. I didn't get much sleep the last couple of days, but I didn't want to cancel the class again because we haven't had classes in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, we carry on. Let's see what's going on here. Let me find the beginning because there's actually a couple different sikhas here. Okay, here we go. So we're in Parshas Mishpatim, and let's just hop right in. Okay, Yudua Shakal HaMoirois Shema Ordam Haim Hashgacha Pratis. As the Rebbe starts off, that it's known that all matters in the world are Hashgacha Pratis. It's divine providence, meaning there's no coincidences in this world. Everything is according to God's will. And in everything, there's a teaching for our divine service and how we serve our Creator. And how much more so does this apply to the general and main connection with the great countries and the most important countries, specifically where we find the abundance of the Yidden living in the time of the exile, and the influence and the custom that they have on the entire world. And this is, we can learn out from this specific teaching and how it's connected to our service in serving Hashem. And this is connected specifically to these days which we find ourselves now. We call the Rosh, first of all, Ha'ma'orah, She'e'ira be'erev Shabbat Zum. Shabo v'toisafo v'tuchnaso yichtav Rashi Medinas Kedodos v'cheshuyis b'ayim. The Rebbe says, and we find ourselves now on Erev Shabbat, and there's a gathering that's taking place where it's bringing together the heads of all the countries, all the big countries and the important countries around the world. Tov, Erev Tov. Rasham Nasi Shtei Atzmaot Hagadolos, and amongst them are the heads of the leaders of the two big superpowers of the world, referring to America and Russia. Chalitoi v'hakrizoi al tukfo chadasha bechosi b'dinos ha'olam. Bitul mitzad shel Milchamos ben Medinas ha'olam. And the purpose of this gathering of the heads of the countries of the world, specifically the largest and most powerful countries, America and Russia, the whole purpose is to get together and make a declaration, a decree, if you will, to nullify the terms of war, to come to an agreement of peace with no more wars. And part of that agreement is to nullify, completely get rid of, and also welcome, fellow brother, and also to to reduce and completely get rid of weapons of war. And furthermore, to promote peace and unity amongst the world. Shiotaf Po'ala ve'ezra hadidas ben medinas ha'olam l'toivos hanashim kulo hanashois kulo. And the idea is to come together and mutually cooperate and come to resolutions of peace and to find ways to stop having wars. That was the purpose of this gathering, which was held at the UN, at the United Nations, in this particular year and this time when the Rebbe was giving the Sikh. The Oma Kulo. And they preface this through Hashgacha Pratis with an opening speech of the leader of this country, of America, talking about the president, and his announcement of what he's going to say to the world at large. And the announcement was that it's time to, in actuality, reduce and nullify our weapons of war. וניצול הכספים כדי להוסיף בענייני וכלכלה של בני המדינה. And instead to add on and focus on matters of economic growth without war. כריזה שאסרה על ידי בית הנבחרים, שבו נקבעים חוקים הדין שיש להם, תכף על פי תורה. And there's been an approval by Congress, to issue a law and to approve these matters according to the dinim, the laws of the Torah. It's a very powerful thing that was taking place at the time when the leaders gathered and said it's time to nullify our weapons of war and usher in the time and an age of peace. But Parshas Shavuot Kalakam, and there's to comprehend and understand and learn out from this teaching, and specifically how it's connected to the time and place which we find ourselves, as it's connected to the Torah, and the specific parsha which we find ourselves, which is the parsha of the week, Mishpatim, as we will further explain. Base. הלימד וההוראה ממורה זה הוא בעניין כללי ועיקר בעבודתם של בני ישראל להביא לימות המשיח. And the teaching that we can begin with is the general and main service of the Jewish people now, always, but specifically as emphasized in our days and times, which is to bring the days of Mashiach. That's our purpose. יודעים הגאולה האמיתית השלמה על ידי משיח ציוונו בשייכות להנהגת אומות העולם, and that it should be a designation of and an announcement of the true and complete redemption through Mashiach, our righteous Redeemer, and how it's connected to the customs of the nations of the world and their role in this event, if you will. And what is that? Uksasoy aravoisam laoisim v'hanichanotihem v'zmarois lo yisha goy el goy chayarav v'lo yiramdu oy merachama. And as the prophet Yeshayahu says, and the Rebbe quotes, that they will turn their swords into plowshares and their weapons of war into farming shears, tools. And one nation will not lift up to go to war against another nation. This is a prophet from the prophet Yeshayahu. And interesting enough, there's a sign that's engraved, a big sign on the front of the UN building that states this pasuk. The scary thing about it is that you have this nation, the United Nations, against God, against the Jewish people, and unfortunately, the horrific state of the political body that is so-called ruling in Israel right now, the revealed one, the hidden hand of the shadow governments and the deep state that is very heavily wielding its influence. If all they did was stand up at the UN and demand, not, we have a right to defend ourselves, we're allowed to fight back, they harmed us, we're allowed to use self-defense. If they came with strength like lions and stood up and said, this land belongs to the Jewish people, it was given to us by God, and no one has any business to tell us what to do with this land. And they came and they quoted God and they quoted the Torah and they went according to Torah law, there'd be no more gullus. Mashiach would come immediately. But unfortunately, that's not the situation we're left with, and we have to find a way to make the best of it. But in the meantime, let's continue. And the Rebbe says, in addition to this, that this matter, this is very powerful what the Rebbe is saying, the fact that these heads of the countries are coming together and discussing peace and turning their weapons of war into farming tools, just like the prophet says, the Rebbe said this is a direct result of the activities of Melech HaMashiach himself. So the Rebbe is obviously clearly telling you that Melech HaMashiach is here and he's working in the world, and that because of his efforts and his work, it's caused the nations of the world to start changing their tune and begin preparing for the redemption. Everything that you see that's going on in the world, by the way, is just to digress for a brief moment, has been predicted by our sages for thousands of years ago. There's multiple mefarshim in places where it's brought down that just like when Moshe Rabbeinu revealed himself to Pharaoh as the leader of the Jewish people, and what happened at the beginning, Pharaoh made it harder for the Jewish people. He made everything more difficult. And Moshe turned to God and said, what are you doing? You told me to go tell Pharaoh that I'm redeeming the Jewish people. And what is the result? Things got even more challenging. It said the same thing is going to happen with Melech HaMashiach. That Melech HaMashiach is going to reveal himself as Mashiach, as the leader of the Jewish people, and announce the redemption is here. And then he will enter in a state of concealment, which is where we're at now. And the so-called leaders of the world will think that, game's over. Like they've always mistaken. They've mistaken the time that Moshe was supposed to come back. They mistook the time of Purim, of when the redemption. Every time the nations of the world act up and try to take ownership over the Jewish people, it's a direct result of them miscalculating the fact that God is going to redeem us. And they think that, God forbid, God has left us and now Mashiach is not coming. And they looked at Gimel Thomas and said, looks like they're down now. So now they have made things more difficult for the Jewish people. And that's an exact replay of what happened in the times of Egypt. But we know the end result, that Mashiach will reveal himself and take us out of the Galus. Take up me'ad mamish. Okay, let's continue. And it says, and that he will administer justice amongst the nations and admonish the nations. They're talking about Melech HaMashiach. Melech HaMashiach is going to be the judge. He is going to be the one who specifically judges the nations of the world for their sins against the Jewish people. Shechein ba'achris hayamim nachon yerhar bayit Hashem, and that this will be the end of days, and that he will stand on the mountain of God and judge the nations of the world. And haru elav kol hagoyim haluchu amim rabim va'imru luchu na'ala al har Hashem al beit Elokai Yaakov v'ranu medrachav nacha ba'aruchisav, and he will stand in the house of God, as we said already, and he will teach the laws and the ways of God to the Jewish people and the nations of the world. And that you come out from Sion and the Torah and the word of Hashem from Yerushalayim. And this is referring to Melech HaMashiach himself. He will be the judge. By the way, the Sikha is very, very powerful. And again, I'm going to do my best to recount in the limited time we have, because I do have to stop early tonight. But I highly recommend that you take the opportunity to go back and relearn this and learn it well and deeply, because there's a lot in here. And again, it's one of the sikhas where the Rebbe openly says he's Moshiach and openly states how the redemption is here, and that the fact of his work in the world is causing the nations of the world to do tshuva. At least they did at the time, and now unfortunately they think that the coast is clear and they went back to their dirty ways. Well, let's see what happens. וכיוון שבימים אלו מחליטים ומכריזים ראשי מדינות בעולם על דרך צמצום וביתו כלי הנשך, והסברה בעניינים חדרושים לקיום כללוס המדינה והעולם ההוא. And again, it says, and since in these days it's been announced and decided from the heads of the leaders of the country, of the countries around the world, to reduce and completely eliminate their weapons of war and usher in a time of peace and freedom between the nations of the world. No more war. And exactly according to the prophet Yeshayahu, as we said, that this is the declaration, that it's time to turn our swords into plowshares. Eretz mimenu yetza lechem, harizah siman berur al netchila kiyumo shel yaoi, zeh golem mitzvah shlem ani Moshiach Chikenu. And the rest said, in the fact that these nations have come together and made such an announcement is the beginning and fulfillment of the prophecy of the redemption, of the true and complete redemption. Later, Rabbi Yor, to explain even more, and since we find ourselves in the time of the ultimate time of the coming of Mashiach, our righteous Redeemer, as we said many times recently, well, Mashiach is literally at the doorstep. He's moments away from revealing himself and taking us out of the galus. And therefore we can already see the beginning of the activities of Melech HaMashiach and how he's affecting the nations of the world. And that he is causing an influence amongst the nations to cause them to gather together to make such a proclamation. But the Rebbe is telling us it's not that the nations of the world decided one day, let's do tshuva. It's that they're worried. They see that Melech HaMashiach is doing his work in the world. The Rebbe at this point in time had already revealed himself openly as Melech HaMashiach. And they're getting worried. The teacher's coming back to the classroom. It's time to straighten things up. So they caused them to automatically say, we better get our acts together. And that's what they did, at least temporarily, until they thought that once again, God forbid, God blundered in his timing or in his choice of Mashiach. And they went back to their nasty ways. But it's interesting to see how this observation of what was going on. And to fulfill the announcement that the nations together gathered and made this proclamation that they will turn the swords into plowshares. It's literally taken word for word from the prophet Yeshayahu, and that was going on in an open way in the UN building in New York at this exact time the Rebbe was saying the Sikha, excuse me. V'zehu hatam shachlata v'chriza zu hayisa b'zman zeh davka. And the reason that such an announcement was being made specifically now at this time is it's because we have already began and we can already see the connection, how it has started, the true and complete redemption through our righteous Redeemer, Mashiach. Amazing. Yomel. Yes, if I forgot to add at the beginning of the Sikha, I want to dedicate tonight's learning to my Rabbi Shtar Zalman ben Sarah. You should have a refuah shleima immediately. ויש להוסיף שחסר של המורה התחילה פעולתו של משיח צדקנו מודגשת גם בפרטי המאור. המקום הזמן שמהם הייתה החלטת וכריזת ראשי המדינס על המאמור המצב כסוסוי הרבוסוי לך. And there is to add to this that the connection and that we see that the beginning of the activities of Melech HaMashiach himself are being emphasized specifically in their influence and the time and place that we find ourselves by the fact that these good resolutions and decrees were announced by the heads of the countries that have come together. And the place that the heads that these representatives have met, who Medina Zeh, but Irazo, the Rebbe said specifically where they're meeting. They're meeting in this country and in this specific city. Medina Ira Shabo Nimsa Beit Rabbeinu Shabbat. It's fascinating. The Rebbe said that they're meeting specifically in the UN, and the UN specifically is in New York. And why is it in New York? As the Rebbe is going to go on to say, you would think, where's the capital of America? Washington, D.C. Where is the White House, the place of the leader of America or the president? Washington, D.C. So one would logically conclude that the UN, that is meeting for the heads of all the countries, would meet in Washington, D.C. But in fact, the UN building is not in Washington, D.C. It's in New York. And the Rebbe said, why is it in New York? Because in New York is where Beit Rabbeinu Shabbat is, the house of the leader of the generation, Beit Chaynu, the shul of our life, Beit HaKnesset, or Beit HaMidrash, the house of study, the house of prayer, Beit Torah Tefillah Gumot Chasidim, the house of Torah and the house of good deeds and prayer, the Kavet Kadosh of the leader of our generation. And from this place, Torah goes out and spreads out to the entire world. And the Torah and teachings are spread out to the entire world, to the four corners of the world, from the home of Mashiach. And where is that? 770. And this is also the fulfillment of he will turn the swords into plowshares. It's fascinating. The Rebbe is pointing out that the whole reason the UN is in New York is because that's where 770 is. No one really ever questions why the UN is not in Washington, D.C. But if you are, the Rebbe is letting us know now. Because it's in the home where the leader of the generation is, where he's spreading out Torah to the entire world. So, the capital of America is not in Washington, D.C. It's in Crown Heights. The Indian was the leader of the generation is here in the lower part of the globe. Situated in this specific place, in this country, and in this city. And this is the place that he is spreading out and rectifying and refining the lower half of the globe, referring to America. Furthermore, as this drawdown and revealed in Matan Torah, Adrab Shenasa Hamakor Shimimeno Nimshak when it Pashet Iker Apuala the Chafutza Sator Minister Chutza Mamash. And specifically in this place is drawn down and spread out. And all the activities of spreading out the Torah and the wall springs throughout the entire world comes from 770 in New York. And through the representatives of Mashiach that he sent out to the furthest corners of the world, in order to spread out the teachings of Torah all the way across the world, to the Yidden across the world. And furthermore, and not only is he spreading out Torah to the Yidden, but also to the nations of the world, to the Goyim, and educating them on the importance of keeping the 7 laws of Noah, the 7 laws of a moral just society, which was never, ever, ever spread out until the times of our Rebbe. And in previous times, even to the point the Rambam said it was Mekuach, it was a danger. It was literally life and death. If you tried to do this in previous generations, you could be killed. Only now, and only our Rebbe, again, you see the power of Melech HaMashiach to affect not only the Jewish people, not only Hasidim, but every single Jew across the world, and not only that, all the Goyim as well. There's only one world leader of Jewry who has focused any attention on trying to help Goyim around the world. And this is one of the tasks, as the Rebbe is so openly and obviously referring to himself as Moshiach and Moshiach. And he goes on further to say that this is one of the tasks of Melech HaMashiach, that he will encourage the nations of the world to go. He will transform them to the one pure tongue, the one pure language, and encourage them to walk in the ways of God, and to worship and to believe in the one God, not in any idols. The Tukfa Achroina, and we see in the most recent times, Hagia Puala Zu, Farisas, Gavoloisoi, Shabadina here, Shabisha Asa, Harasa, Al de Gala, Bahriza, Rahama, Haflutus Torah, Mihuras, Bad Mahama, Bamano, Bamona, Babura Oidom, Umanhigoi, Afobichem. נמשך גם שם פועל עשוי השלוחי נשיא דרנו בחפוץ התורה וחודש Mesiras Nefesh Mamash, we see that the emissaries, the representatives of Melech HaMashiach, through self-sacrifice, have spread out and brought Torah teachings across the world. The Tukfa Acharoina, she's Bata Gazeras HaMalucha, it Pasha, it Afshra, Amnashech, Polaso, the Chafutz Torah Chuzabait, by and we see more specifically in the most recent term, referring to the Rebbe's leadership, or the Frierdiker Rebbe's final state of his leadership. As we know, the Rebbe kind of puts them both together, that the increase in spreading out Torah throughout the world has taken an additional strength and additional work. It's gotten much more revealed, if you will. And they have been spread out and advertised all across the world. Which was not proper, was not so much allowed through previous governments. But and we've entered a new period where righteousness and peace is forming throughout the world. Including a basic foundation of faith and belief in our Creator and God as the ruler and director of the world. So the Rebbe is pointing out how much things have changed since the beginning of the Frierdiker Rebbe's work in communist Russia, where you couldn't even talk about Judaism. It was a death sentence or a life sentence in Siberia, which was pretty much a death sentence, to the point where we are now, where there's Chabad houses throughout the whole entire world, thousands and thousands of Torah centers for spreading out the teachings. המנהגיה של מדינה זו. משתתפות שם של עוד כמה מנהגים מדינס גדוליס בעולם שבו נתקבלת הקלוטת והחידוש שתחת again we see the meeting place of all these leaders of the world and how they came together for one point to discuss peace in the world. יש לומר, there is to say שבקיומה של פיגשנו הקלט והכריזה זה ובעיר של נשיא דרנו כבגשנו מר האדמו"ר, and that we see that this good decision and announcement is taking place specifically in the city of the leader of the generation. כלל גם מנהג המדינה זו שהצריך לבוא מעיר ובירה לעיר מרומה שכל זה בו כתוצאה מפולס וחפוץ אשר תורס ומחוץ צדק וישר לכל אדם שנעשה מנעשים על ידי נשיא דורנו משיח שבדור ועד שעדי השלם הרבודה וחכם ימים אלו נעשה אלוהים כולו ראה ומקשר לתחילת פולס למלך המשיח. And it says that this is, again, the Rebbe is referring to the fact that Mashiach, all this is happening is because Mashiach is doing his work in the world and his influence in the world is seen. And this is part of his job, to transform the nations of the world. The Rebbe said, and the Hashgacha Pratis is revealed, and it's very appropriate that these events are taking place now specifically. When the Sikh was first given, they were talking about Tashin and Beis, and Zach Shvat, and Rosh Chodesh Adar, talking about 34 years ago. Yeah. No, what am I talking about? 30, Tashin and Beis were now down 32 years ago. All right, let me do a time check here. Give me 1 second, please, if you will. Find it in the goodness of your hearts. 337. 307, that's 30 pages. So 322. It's going to be the halfway points. Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to talk about the several reasons why this is taking place now. All of a sudden, why wasn't it taking place before? Excuse me. Aleph, first reason. The fact that the day of the week that it's taking place, which is Erev Shabbat. And this is a foretaste of the fact that it says that in the days of Mashiach will be eternal Shabbat for all times. That's going to be nice. And then peace will return to the world. So the first, the fact that it's taking place on Erev Shabbat, and it's a remez, it's a hint that the discussion of returning the world to a state of peace and how that coincides with the eternal peace we're going to have on Shabbat. Second reason, the day of the month that it's taking place. Yom Vav b'chodesh b'kamatri the Shem Havai. It's taking place on the 26th day of the month of Shvat, which happens to be today, or was today. Today's not over, but same day. And we know that Chaf 26 is the Gematria, the Shem Havai, of God's name. The name he uses to create the world. And this is hinted also in the situation, how it will be in the future to come, where we will have, through the name Havaya, that God will renew the world, so to speak. That God's glory will be revealed for all flesh to see. Kipi Havaya Dibor. And from the mouth of Hashem will speak Havaya. And there will be no more undesirable things. He will remove them from the earth. Because the entire world will be filled with the occupation. The entire occupation of the world will be to know God, and the whole world will be filled with the knowledge of God. Excuse me. And we see the emphasizing of two of these matters together. The 26th day of the month and the 6th day of the week. Referring to the example of the 6th day of creation. Because who did God create on the 6th day? He created man. Which is the entire purpose of creation. Because the entire point of creation was for man. But and specifically as we find ourselves on the 6th day of the week, on the 26th day of the month, which is the 6th day of the week, the day God created man, and the 26th day of the month referring to the name Havaya, which God used to create the entire world. So we see again Hashgacha Pratis is connected to these matters. Gimel. And furthermore, also as is connected to the leader of the generation, that we see that it's Erev Shabbos, the last one of the month of Shvat, Chodesh Echad Esher, the 11th month, and on the 10th day of the 11th month, it was day the previous Rebbe was Yistachus from this world. So the Yoiser She'as or the Yoiser Ois. And the Rebbe said, and on the 11th day was the continuation of his leadership. And even a stronger, more powerful than it was before. The Rebbe is referring to him taking over as the leader of the generation. And after we've had 42 years pass from the time of the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, it's connected to the 42 journeys that the Jewish people had in the desert amongst the nations of the world. Excuse me. Sha'az kavar and the Rebbe said, and then we already find ourselves standing to the entrance of the land of Israel, to the true and complete redemption, including now. Especially as we see the announcement that just took place that they will turn their swords into plowshares. This is emphasized and connected to the activities of the leader of the generation, the Moshiach of the generation. And that through his work, they have fulfilled the prophecy of returning their swords into plowshares. Amazing. David. And it's connected to this week's Parsha. Parshas Mishpatim. Ve'elu Mishpatim asher tashim lifneihem. And these are the ordinances, the decrees that God has placed before them. But Rashi explains, Ve'elu moisif al harishonim, ma harishonim misinai, af al edo misinai, lifneihem, v'lo lifnei goyim, afilo yedias v'din echad, that these are the laws specifically given by Moshe on Har Sinai of how we are supposed to conduct ourselves. And the emphasis on this week and the halachas that we're focusing on of Mishpatim are mostly between man and his friend. That that are connected to the things that make sense. In other words, mishpatim are laws that we keep, that even though they make logical sense, don't steal, don't kill. You'd be amazed at how many people that doesn't make logical sense to. But that for normal people, the laws of basic humanity, of what's right and what's wrong, are emphasized in this parsha and in the laws of mishpatim. But the fact is, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, that we don't fulfill them because they make logical sense. We're fulfilling them because they're commandment from Hashem. Even though they make sense in our brain, the verim or imrim b'torah mishpat she'elu lo ne'abrakidei la'omimran v'ad kirikat shelo ala malat lo nidei torah hayno lemedin tziniora mitchila v'igolot מלחמה מן המעלה ויסתר מזה חייבים מובן גם בהסקל של אמות העולם ואז שתכל שבכמה דינים דיני אמות העולם כדיני ישראל. You see that these are logical laws that make sense even to the nations of the world. They're clear things that work based on safety, on what is right and what is wrong. יש לומר שלכן אמר בתחילה בפתיחה הפרשה ואלה משפט ואף אלה מיסים. And the beginning of the parsha talks about that these are the laws that were given on Har Sinai. שגם המשפטים שחייבים מובן בסגל אדם צריכים לקיים. And that furthermore that these laws that were obligating, they're laws that we can understand that make sense. Nevertheless, they were commanded by Hashem. And they were specifically given to us from God. They were given to the Jewish people as part of the Torah. And since they make sense in our logical brain, that still is not the reason we fulfill them. We fulfill them because they were commanded to us by God. Hey, the Yonik Yosef. And by the way, it says the Rambam brings this point out because the 7 laws of Noah, the basic 7 laws of humanity, they make logical sense, right? Believe in one God, don't curse God, be kind to animals, don't steal, don't murder, establish courts of justice, and no adultery or forbidden sexual relations. They make logical sense. Well, again, not to everyone, but to most people, they make logical sense. But the point is, the Rambam said it's not enough for the nations of the world to have a place in the world to come by saying, yeah, I'll do that. That makes sense. They have to fulfill the 7 laws of Noah specifically with the understanding that they're doing it because God instructed them to do so. The parshas ve'ela mishpat. Va'af elu misinai shegam ha'mishpatim shechayoivim מובן בסקל אדם צריך לקיים מפני צבא הקדוש ברוך הוא משום זה תישאים לפניהם. I already said that. Yeah, okay, repeating. Hey, but I'll make Yoser in more deeply. I have to start picking up the pace here and just kind of paraphrasing outside instead of word for word. Let's see how we do here. Because I definitely want to get through to the end of the Sikha, which is very powerful. These are the laws. Excuse me. הוא כתוצאה מזה שבציוויים אלו נתלבש רצונו של הקדוש ברוך הוא שמצד עצמו הוא למעלה מהחוכמה גם מהחמוסה שיסברך וכיוון שהתורה היא לפריסה נפלקנסות שבהם נברא העולם נעשה דברים אלו מחייבים בגדרי עולם ומביא גם בשכל אדם שדעשוי נויטר לדברים ולחייבים לצורך החמוסה של הקדוש ברוך הוא. The Rebbe says that even though we are fulfilling these laws because they make sense, we're doing them because God instructed us to. And the fact that they make sense to us is specifically because God set it up in such a way that they make sense. In other words, it's very easy for us to say, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, why does it make sense? Because God gave us moral and ethical brains that things should make sense. היא בכך שהמשפטים מתרמיסים ממשיכים גם בסגר אדם שזהו תכן החידוש למען תורה שבתר גזר והפסח בין עליונים ותחתונים שחמאס ושקורת ותויסך גם דעתוי נוטה לכך. And this is one of the great things that took place in the giving of the Torah, is that God's wisdom and understanding was able to come down into this world and enter into the brains of man. There was a decree before that the energy from above couldn't come down, and we couldn't elevate the lower reality back up to God. But when we got the Torah, God nullified that decree. And furthermore, we see also that the nations of the world must fulfill the laws of Noah that we just spoke about. That's exactly what I just finished saying. And it's not enough that they keep the laws because they make logical sense, but because God gave them to them and they're fulfilling the will of God. That's why they have to do it. But and in the days of Mashiach, all this will reach its ultimate culmination. And the entire occupation of the world will only be to know God. And then the wisdom of God will cover the entire world. Asapir, וחזו אס אלוקים ואכלו משתיות, תריס, אלוקויס, המשך וההוידס ושכל אדם, ותאכלס עמו כמו המזון, ונעשה דם בבשר ובשרוי, איידר הלב והפנימיס התורה באופן של הבנה והשגה, ותורת חסידות חב"ד. כלל איידר התרגום בשביעים לשון האומס האלה. Says and the ultimate way to tap into God's wisdom, if you will, and it's by learning about God's wisdom through the innermost dimension of the Torah, specifically through Chassidus Chabad, which has been translated to all the nations of the world, all the tongues of the nations of the world. This way, even those who don't speak Hebrew can learn about Chassidus, can learn the teachings of God's innermost will. But Jim already said that the and the Rebbe said this is the beginning of the prophecy that Mashiach will teach the entire world to worship the one God and to speak from the one pure language. Vav. And we see again how this is connected to the announcement that just took place from the nations of the world, the leaders of the nations of the world, and how it specifically took place during this week's Parshas Mishpatim. And the idea of turning your swords into plowshares makes sense. This is like the Mishpatim. Most, and I say most, normal and intelligent people will realize that it makes sense to stop having wars and to have peace. Unfortunately, wars are racket, and besides the fact of jockeying for power, wars are planned. They don't just happen. Just like pandemics don't happen by themselves, just like stock market crashes. The whole thing's manipulated. Of course, God's hand is behind everything and allows it to happen. But the so-called rulers of the shadow government who are pulling the strings behind the scenes. They create wars because they have multiple reasons, but one of the main ones is it's financially beneficial. But outside of those sick, evil tyrants, 99% of the world, maybe more, would agree it doesn't make sense to have war. It makes more logical sense. Let's have peace. What do we want to kill each other for? So the Rebbe says that's a mishpat. That's a law that's connected to like this week's Torah portion that makes sense in our brain. Most normal people realize the world should be conducted in a good way, in a righteous way, in a proper way. And that we should negate and stop having all these wars that are causing massive destruction. God should protect us. And therefore we should destroy the weapons of war. That turn them into farming tools to benefit the world. But if you look throughout the continuation of generations, you will see there's continuous and ongoing wars amongst the nation of the world. And therefore, all this destruction that they've caused in the world is the complete opposite and stands in contrast to what makes logical sense to most normal people. But all culture will have it, and therefore we have to understand the Gemara Nisuyim Hatukaf Vesor Muhammad Goyim. And therefore, we're entering a new reality. This new reality where all of a sudden the nations of the world decide, let's stop making war and have peace. This is something that's never really been contemplated before. And the fact that it's happening now on Erev Shabbos, or it happened, the Rebbe gave the Sikh on Shabbos, and this happened on Erev Shabbos. And the Rebbe, this is a powerful boom. The Rebbe said the fact that we are now seeing the heads of the nations of the world on Erev Shabbos and Parshas Mishpatim gather together to make an announcement that it's time to nullify our weapons of war and instead focus on ushering in peace to the world. This is a direct result of the announcements and the resolution of the many rabbis. That signed up Psakdim that Melech HaMashiach is about to come. Following about the Psakdim that was given regarding the leader of the generation. The Meshach Zman Hagos. That we have already completed all of our deeds and all of our work throughout the continuation of the exile. And we're all standing ready to receive and accept our righteous Redeemer. Including the Psakdin of the many rabbis, Morei Hara'ah Yisrael, including the heads of many of the Jewish leaders, that the time of our redemption has arrived. And that a king has stood up from the house of David. And he is presumed to be Mashiach. And he will continue on with his work, and for sure he will be Mashiach Vadai. Psakdin HaMisima, according to the Psakdin from Har Sinai. Shenimshak v'hadragam b'gidrei ha'olam, that is drawn down and penetrated into the world. Ad kirikach sheminhagim muta olam, and this is influencing the conduct of the nations of the world. Machlitim, machrizim, madoim, to gather together and make such a proclamation. Sheish b'hem ha'toichef ha'dina malcham medina, and it's specifically in this time, in this period. And therefore they have decreed that they will turn their swords into pashas. Unbelievable. There was a psak that was signed. Unfortunately, most people are not aware of this. It has not been translated to English, but is in Hebrew. You could look at it online. Over 170 Orthodox rabbis, many of them not Chabad, from very, very big name people. We're not talking about small people. Signed a psak that according to halacha, the Lubavitcher Rebbe meets all the qualifications to be declared as Moshiach. It's never happened before in history, and it hasn't happened since. There's never been someone that there's been a psak according to halacha that meets the qualifications to be Mashiach. And the Rebbe said specifically because of this, the nations of the world said, we better get our acts together. Because we know a psak down here is also a psak up from above. And when this got declared, they realized the time is up, that they better start acting on good behavior. It's very powerful. Yesh Lamar is to say, Shahagash is a Shaichi says, Shahaklat Hakriza, the Psaktin, Misinai, Misgala Bayom HaShabbat. Shahaz Quran, but Torah Parshas Mishpatim Kulo, Shabo, Mudgash Shagal Mishpatim, Hemisinai, but other example, done very done. The Krizas Manhagi Umotorim, because it's so a revolution. I see, Abi Hayok Shivakulam. Who he could sucked in a Torah all Derek by Mashiach Kingdom. And this psak was a psak from Sinai. It was not that a bunch of rabbis came together and decided this. It was declared from heaven. That's it. The Rebbe meets all the qualifications to be Mashiach, and it's time for us to take us out of the skulls. And that's why all of a sudden they had to change their mind, decided it's time to start having peace in the world. Not because they became righteous all of a sudden or did tshuva. Otherwise. Zayin. Yesh lahaysev b'hakasher v'hashaychus tepashas mishpatim l'siyam zman of galus. And there's an add to this, the connection and relevance to Parshas Mishpatim and how we are at the end of the exile and the beginning of the redemption. But Meshech haParshiyoyish b'Parshas Mishpatim bo'o the Mismoichoyis. The Parshas Yisrael, and we see that Mishpatim is connected to Parshas Yisrael, which we learned last week. Siyoma v'choisma b'dinin hamizbeach. Lama nusmacha Parshas Dinin the Parshas Mizbeach lamar lakach tishim Sanhedrin etzoham l'kol mikdash. Shebezem l'romas kim hiyud v'shiva shoiftecha k'rishayin. And this is also in the prophecy that says, and you will return your judges as in aforetimes. Like we learned out in Parshas Shoftim. Shiva is in Hayden the Shachas Hagezeras, but basically there's Shishim. All that exactly Hashak Parsha, Navia Sacha, El Makoy Masha Hakinoisi, Kava, Mikoy Manicha, Connect, Daivazah, Hat, Me, the Kuresh, but all redeemed by Beit HaMikdash, Shal Ma'ala Bekivan, Connect basically some. But the Parshas Mishpatim, the Parshas Truma. And then we see that this is followed out by Parshas Truma, which we learn about the Mikdash and how it's connected to the third base of Mikdash and the redemption. Okay, we're skipping over Ches. And 1 second, let's see where. All right, so I'm gonna speed things up a little bit, hop around a little bit. And now we're gonna do tests. Al pi amar le'el chazek hasyoyser ha'pelia v'hasmirha v'yachad im godor v'tza'ar ha'ala and the Rebbe said the fact that we're still suffering very much and that the true and complete redemption is not here. We still have to yell out Ad Maseh. We have to demand of Hashem This is what Hashem wants from us, right now more than anything, to scream out to Him and say, help us, take us out of this gutless. We want Mashiach. We can't keep saying, okay, so this is how it is, whatever. More people will die, God forbid. Chas v'shalom. Look what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. The Jewish people need to clamor, we need to scream to the heavens to bring Mashiach. And we see all the signs have already passed. And we're already at the threshold of the true and complete redemption. The Ma'oira, the Erev Shabbos is there. So I feel and we see that even the nations of the world are gathered and saying it's time for the redemption. It's time to turn our swords into plowshares. And we find ourselves in Shabbos Kodesh outside the land of Israel. The Rebbe is obviously in 770 saying this Sicha. And that we all need to travel with the Jewish people from all around the world to our holy land and to Yerushalayim and to the base of Mikdash, and where we will sit before the great meal of Leviathan, B'Shar and the guarded wine. We have to demand this of Hashem. And furthermore, namely, and for sure that Hashem is the one who's going to build the base of Mikdash Shlishi. It should happen immediately. Okay, we're going to skip over Yud, and we're going to hop into Yud Aleph. And okay, Baruch Hashem, we'll be done with an early landing this evening. And the giving of power specifically connected to what we said above in these days. You see the great advantage of the month of Shvat. The 11th month. And it comes now, we see, as we're holding in the 25th of the month. And this is a simon, a sign of, and that Hashem will bless the Jewish people. Brachas Kohanim, like in the brachas of Kohanim. The and the blessing is with love specifically. And as it's connected to the bracha of Kohanim, which blesses all the Jewish people, which we say every single day after the bracha of the Torah, in the morning brachas, and therefore it is necessary that we emphasize even more this idea of love of a fellow Jew, Ahavas Yisrael. And furthermore, we see in the morning prayers afterwards, you say that, and that Hashem, that we should you should accept upon yourself the mitzvah of the Torah to love your neighbor like yourself, and that you should bless us all as one. It should be in a complete way. And this bracha should reach its ultimate state of fulfillment, which will be in the days of Mashiach, when we'll see the ultimate unity and love between each other and Hashem. Today's Yom Yom. And after the 25th is the 26th of the month. And we said earlier, the 26th is the numerical equivalent of the name Havaya. And this is fulfilling and connected to the fulfilling of the mitzvahs. And you should bless the Jewish people, which will take place through the Kohanim in the base of Mikdash. They'll actually be able to use, I'm a Kohen, one of the tribe members, the name of Havaya, which we're not allowed to use now outside the base of Mikdash. The base of Mikdash is not standing, so we have to say Adonai. We can't say the real name of God. And the preparation for that is now through the service of the Jewish people. That we should all the time view Hashem as He's standing right in front of us. even now in the time of the exile. And that this is through this, and we should declare and reveal the name of Havaya throughout the whole world. And then comes the 27th of the month, which is tomorrow. Shemin Zayit. Zach is for Zayit, is referring to pure oil. The Elois Ner Tamid, that is used to light the candles in the base of Mikdash. Menorah is the Hav Torah, in the gold and pure menorah. Mekasha Chas Shirum Mazal Achdus Sam Shal Shivas Sugim, connected to the 7 branches, which are representative of the 7 types of Yidden, the 7 emotional attributes. And after this is the 28th of the month, Tosefes Koach, which is the gematria of Koach, or power. It's also gematria of Yechid. That we should have the power and the strength to fulfill all that we have stated above. And then comes Erev Rosh Chodesh. Kanal Rosh Chodesh, which is a preparation for Rosh Chodesh. When the moon is renewed. This is indicative of the renewing of the Jewish people. The word that makes it the same in the true and complete redemption. But Prat Rosh Chodesh, and we see the fact in that year that Rosh Chodesh fell on the 3rd day of the week, and the 3rd day of the week is doubled over good, where God said it is good twice. And this ultimate good will be revealed and there's no better good than the redemption. But Prat Kafal, especially as it's doubled over. That this doubling of goodness is connected to the redemption. But Gashi Rosh Chodesh Adar, and how much more so to this applying in Rosh Chodesh Adar. The Bria Mazali, when the Mazal of the Jewish people is strong. The Simcha. And this is the month that God will transform and turn over all things to joy. We have the joy of pouring. We see and the closest of redemption to redemption. Purim to Pesach. Like the days that took you out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. Excuse me. That we should have the true and complete redemption even before the redemption of Purim. Okay, good base. The Haisef, in addition to all this, and even in addition to the fact that we will go from redemption to redemption, the fact that Adar straddles Nisan, two months of redemption. There's to say that we see also Adar is connected to Shvat. When the Mishnah, as the Mishnah says, Ein bein Adar Rishon the Adar Sheni Ela Kriyas Megillah Tanot Avoni, and our sages teach us that there's no difference between the first month of Adar and the second month of Adar. The only difference is we don't give gifts to the poor. We don't read the Megillah. It's also in this year a double Adar. We have Adar, 2 months of Adar. Excuse me. Mashma Shaba Asher Inimim Siyum Hein Nesiram Hazeh Kivan Shnikra Adar Rishon. Misbara mistavar lo marshu rishon to amada hashivos. Kemudgas benergo the shiva'a adar shekashver im bitul gezer saman. And we see this connected to the 7th of Adar when Haman Harash's decree was nullified. Shinifal poor b'chodesh Adar, when the morale, the lottery fell in the month of Adar. But of course, Haman failed to realize that on the 7th of Adar, Moshe not only passed, but he also was born. And we see from this many matters connected to the month of Adar. Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon b'Yom HaShlishi. Hai Kishivo Mashiach Tzidkenu Techad Miyam Mamash. And all these matters we see are very appropriate for the fact that Mashiach should come right now immediately. It's never Rosh Chodesh, even before Rosh Chodesh. The Kadesh HaKadoshim Al Pi Haroi, and therefore everything will return to its ultimate state of holiness. Yitachan sheyesh makayim Sanhedrin Yishna Mikabot Rak Adar Achad. Okay. Yud Gimel. Last paragraph of the evening. We're gonna finish early this evening, as I mentioned. And I'm very impressed that I have not fallen asleep, because I'm quite exhausted right now. God's will. Mail Shagur the Mitzvah Hashem Oil Mashiach Tzikenu Techa Toive before Mamish Techa Miad Mamish. That we should have the true and complete redemption through our righteous Redeemer immediately. And for sure, it's not necessary to wait until the month of Nisan. It says the month of Nisan will be redeemed. And we don't have to wait till the second Adar. And we don't even have to wait till the month of Adar. Since Mashiach is a righteous Redeemer, is going to come this Shabbos Mavarchim, before we even get to the first Adar. In the completion of the month of Shvat, Zach Shvat, the 27th of Shvat. And specifically this Shabbat after Chatzos, Bizman HaMincha, B'Suda Shlishi, the time of Mincha and the third meal. The third meal is connected to the third redemption in the third temple. And the most important thing that should be in actuality, Techabad Mama should happen immediately. Including all the explanations of Miyad. Now hold on to your horses, because the Rebbe is going to give us a bomb here to end off the Sikha. Because he dropped numerous places in the Sikha referencing the fact that all of this is happening in the world at the time only because of Mashiach's actions and because what Mashiach is doing and because they already signed up Saktin, according to Halacha, that the Rebbe meets all the qualifications to be Mashiach. And when the Rebbe says numerous times that Mashiach must come immediately, he uses the term miyad. Miyad means now or immediately, and it's 3 Hebrew letters, Mem, Yud, Dalet. And the Rebbe said, in a general way, Mem, Yud, Dalet stands for, M is from Moshe Rabbeinu, Yud is for Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, and Dalet is for David Malcha Mashiach, King David. And Kabir Shema Mash, we call it Reish Miyad, Kshuta, Mamish, Mamish, Mamish. And the Rebbe said, as Miyad means for our generation, what is the Rosh Hashanah of Miyad? He said it refers to the 3 distinct periods of the leader of our generation. And what are they? The Mem stands for Mashiach, and Menachem is his name. The Yud stands for Yosef Yitzchak, which is the previous Rebbe. And the Dalet is for Dovber, which is the Rebbe before him. So if you need any more clarity that the Rebbe is telling you Mashiach, come look at the footnote 148 in the Sikha. And the Rebbe said that it stands for the Dalet is Dober, the 5th Rebbe. The Yud is Yosef Yitzchak, the 6th Rebbe. And the M is for Menachem, our Rebbe, whose Mashiach. The Rebbe says flat out. We should have the full Galus of Melech HaMashiach long before I even hit the end of the stream over here. Hashem should bless us all to have revealed goodness in every capacity. He should redeem our captives, free the Jewish people, avenge our blood, and we should have the fullest Galus of Melech HaMashiach right now. Yechi Aloneinu Moreinu V'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Naboy. God bless you.